Thank you all. First of all, first things first, selfie. All right. So thank you guys for joining. Welcome to my lightning talk. Soon I'll reveal the secrets of the world and tell you all how you can save thousands of hours through self-service. But first, I'm going to ask you this by raise of hands. How many of you in the audience call themselves DevOps engineers, infra developers, platforms? All right. Thank you, guys. And how many of you call themselves developers, engineering managers, directors, and all kinds of other made-up titles? Please raise your hands. OK, thank you. So developers, you're not going to believe it, but I've actually been visiting your offices recently, and I've seen exactly how your working day look like. And let me tell you this, it's not pretty. This is how you look. You start your day, prepare your first cup of coffee, and write a few lines of code. And then you get stuck. And why are you stuck? You're stuck because you need to fetch data from a bucket you can't access. So you reach out to infra or DevOps, but they are very busy people. So you'll wait an hour, maybe two. Somehow you'll manage, and you'll write another few lines of code. But then you'll get stuck again. Now you need to provision a resource. Maybe you want a new Lambda. Maybe you need a new cluster. And you're not very fluent with Terraform templates or IAM policies. So you'll create a ticket to DevOps, and you'll wait again. And soon after, your working day will complete, and you'll get no real work done. So I'll let you developers take a few seconds and connect to this feeling of frustration while I move on to you, DevOps. And your situation is not much better. This is your office, and you guys are completely flooded. You are flooded with requests coming from developer. The first developer needs your help to provision a resource. The other developer needs a new cluster. The third one can't access a server. And you guys are juggling through all these requests all day long, and before you know it, you finished your day, and you didn't even get to your real work. You didn't get to production, to maintenance, to monitoring, to upgrades, to whatnot. And then you look at your to-do list, and it's even longer than what you started the day with. I'm sure that looks familiar. But does it have to be like this? Is this a foundational truth that cannot be changed? Or is there another way of doing things? Well, I'm certainly here to help you guys find out. My name is Ofir, and I lead the platform engineering team at MyHeritage, where we help millions of people discover more about who they are, taking them to a fascinating journey of family history discovery. And here are a few places where you can find me. I want to introduce you guys with the self-service buffet. And in this buffet, developers just come and collect food to their plates. But can you imagine a different kind of buffet? Maybe this buffet. A buffet with pre-made recipes for compute, for storage, and for everything developers need. And the chefs are us, the platform team. We, as the platform team, saw hundreds of resources, and we know exactly how they look like in our organization. So we created opinionated recipes for everything the developers need, with every ingredient in place, the organizational standards, security policies, defaults that we decided on in order not to make these decisions every time. And with that, we take our developers here to the golden path. And in our golden path, there are families of resources. Each one is configured with all the rules and the configuration in advance. Let's take a concrete example, like a bucket. A simple construct, right? Not really. When you provision a bucket, you know to have to make a lot of decisions, starting from IAM policies and who can access the bucket, and continuing with lifecycle rules and versioning and auditing and encryption and inventory and what's not. But after receiving hundreds of buckets in our organizations, we identified two main types. First, the blue one, the bucket that is public to the world, which can be accessed by our users. Then the red bucket. This is the internal bucket. The internal bucket can be accessed only from within our own private network. So we created rules and policies for each of these, and we created them once. We heavily tested them and prepared a ready-made recipe for our buffet. And now you guys are the chefs, and you have to make decisions and think how you can design this buffet. What are the ingredients? So let me help you. Let's take 2 ingredients to start with. First, infrastructure as code, where developers manage, create, and provision their infrastructure. And second, CI/CD, where we enforce pull requests, security scans, and take the developers all the way to production. But we have to make our infrastructure simple and hide all the mess behind the scenes. Because if we don't, we'll end up with something like this, that in order to create a simple bucket with plain Terraform, the developer will have to create a provider, and a bucket construct, and an assume role policy, a bucket policy, roles that connect to these policies, and a policy attachment. Are you guys exhausted? Because I know I certainly am, and there's no way I'm taking my developers for this journey. But there is an alternative, and the alternative is the self-served architecture. And in this architecture, we give developers to do what they love, which is to write object-oriented, extendable code based on CDK-TF. On top of that, we create abstractions, those self-served recipes in our buffet that contains all the organizational standards, the security policies, and our opinionated decisions on top of every relevant resource across all providers. And on top of that, a CI/CD process for infrastructure as code that forces reviews and automates the process until production. So finally, let's see some real code in action. A bucket creation can be as simple as this. Just create an instance of our self-served bucket, which have all the defaults, all the opinion and decisions, everything is behind the scenes. Mostly, the developer doesn't care about them. Connect it to a role by just defining who can assume it, and then connect the two together by defining which actions can be performed on the bucket. And what you don't see here is actually the key. All the mess, all the policies, the attachments, the defaults that we decided on, everything is hidden and abstracted away from the developer. But we allow developers to override these decisions. In this case, the developer creates a bucket and defines it as sensitive. He knows he has maybe PII data in his buckets. And for us, the platform team, we know that every time we see a sensitive bucket, we have to enable encryption, auditing, and access logs. Again, the developer doesn't even care about that. Then, remember the red bracket from earlier, the internal one? So in this case, the developer marks his bucket as internal, and we enable all the relevant policies, those that were created once by the platform team, that disable any access from outside of our network. Additional decisions by the developers, an inventory, and a decision to opt out of versioning, which is a decision that we made as a platform team to enable. And then see how simple it is to connect it to Athena and create a lifecycle rules that moves objects in a prefix to a different tier after 1 month. Again, all the complexities are behind the scenes. Let's see another example, and this time connecting resources. So we create an SQS here and define a dead letter queue for it. Again, the exact definition of the queue is behind the scenes, and then we connect it to a Lambda. And this Lambda is triggered easily for each and every item that enters the queue. Let's try a more complex object, like a cluster, in this case, an ECS cluster. And can a cluster be defined by 3 lines of code, where the developer will only have to specify the instance types? Well, the developer maybe knows that, and maybe he doesn't. But over 60 resources are created behind the scenes when the developer defines this cluster. From VPCs, subnets, security groups, IAM roles, policies, attachments, CloudWatch alarms, and so on and so forth. Most of the time, the developer doesn't even care about that. He just wants to copy the previous cluster that worked on production. And we're not limited only for cloud resources. Here's an example for a Kafka topic provisioning. And here, we decided to give the developer the option to choose the cluster. In this case, the developer chose the analytics cluster. The exact location and address of the cluster is abstracted away from the developer. And here, just deciding on a few properties such as partition number, replication, and retention. And we're not limited to this only. The possibilities are really endless. Okta groups, GitHub repos, console configuration, and vault secrets, and really requirements for self-service in the organization arrive almost every day. So, to sum it up, before self-service, we were here in the wild, wild west. And in the wild, wild west, there is manual resource creation. There are no standards enforced in the organization. There's no GitOps, no reviews, and no security scans. And this all leads to very slow development cycles. And today, after 1 year of self-service, we have over 100 projects that were created with this infrastructure by 16 different teams. Thousands of resources overall with no DevOps dependency. And we have human-readable code that can be understood and maintained by everyone. This all led to 92 satisfaction rating from our developers, and we're still hunting down the final 8%. And this is the final slide. This is when you want to take off your camera, take a picture, and show your managers. Because when you have self-service, you get efficiency. You get developers do what they need to do, which is dealing with business domain problems and not wrestling with infrastructure mess, and you make DevOps free for more meaningful tasks. You get standards across your golden path, organizational and security standards, and this all lead to speeding up all life cycle of your development processes and increasing organizational velocity dramatically. Thank you, and enjoy your self-service journey. You can scan this barcode and rate my talk. Thank you very much.